Hello and welcome viewers in Cecil County and all over the world. It's January 20th. This is 30 at 6. I'm Rob Churnside, and tonight we have our first guest in the studio, Mike Dixon. Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Rob, for having me.
It's Martin Luther King Day today, Monday.
Yes, sir.
And what does that signify for Cecil County?
Well, I will tell you this morning as the day got underway, Wrights AME Church sponsored their 30th annual Martin Luther King Day celebration. And Rob, there was an enormous crowd turned out this morning for breakfast. I heard they had over 200 people turn out, and they were reflecting on King's legacy, his memory, and service to the community. But we too had our stories in Cecil County about civil rights and advancing towards social justice.
Well, it was really a different time back then. It's like, 60, 70 years ago.
It was, yeah.
And we've made a lot of progress, but back then, of course, we didn't have all the computers and all the modern technology, but the word got out
right
through television and radio, and people in Cecil County maybe were involved in national efforts.
Yeah, and in many ways, and of course, what was going on nationally happens here as well. So I'll give you an idea. Before '64, restaurants in Maryland, once you crossed the Mason-Dixon line, were generally segregated. So if you were an African American, either they didn't serve you or you went to the back window or something like that. So long before years before the Freedom Riders started into the Deep South and were visiting places like Mississippi and Alabama, our little Route 40 right through here in Cecil County and Hartford and Delaware were a focus of the Freedom Riders. So in 61 or 62, they target all of the little diners and probably many of the places you can remember, trying to get them to open up for public accommodations.
Right.
And by the way, they were successful.
So explain to me, of course I know, but explain to our viewers exactly what a Freedom Rider was.
Okay. So Freedom Riders came out of the Congress, thing called CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, and they sought to open up public facilities to public accommodations, restaurants, buses, and a wide variety of things. Now, they're going to go into the Deep South, and it's in Mississippi and Alabama. It's going to be a different story. But I'm always amazed that one of their early interventions, one of their earliest ventures were places we knew right here from the Delaware Memorial Bridge to Route 40 in Baltimore, and they run an entire campaign around these restaurants. Now, people weren't sitting there the first day the Freedom Riders show up saying, oh, sure, come on in. We're opening up our door to serve African Americans. It was not like the Deep South at all, but no, people were not welcome those first couple of trips. The Maryland State Police were called, the Sheriff's Office were called. People were arrested for trespassing, for refusing to leave properties. And 4 or 5 of them will get incarcerated at the old jail on North Street in Elkton.
You mean DeWitt Hotel?
The DeWitt Hotel. Are you familiar with it?
Yes.
How do you know it?
Well, we were speeding one time. And on our way to State Line Liquors on a Sunday.
State Line Liquors, so it was an important destination.
Yeah, right. And the cop pulled my buddy over, who thought he was a race car driver, and he said, follow me to the police station.
Yeah.
And just as we were about ready to go in and he was going to process him, somebody squealed through the light, and he threw his license back in and goes, I got more important things to do.
Okay.
So I remember that jail.
And what year was that?
That was like 70.
70, yeah. Well, so in 61 or 62, they are locked up. Probably the jail looked exactly the same way you remembered it. They then go on a hunger strike in the Elkton jail. Now, this was early, before you see so much of this in the Deep South. And eventually, someone pays their fines and they were released for jail. President Kennedy gets involved. Governor Tawes gets involved. And over a year or so, the Hotel Motel Restaurant Association along Route 40 will agree to serve African Americans.
Cool.
So things begin to change. Now, in the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's time, of course, there are many other things you can talk about in Cecil County as far as how things were different, just like you were talking about. The public schools will not integrate till 64 or 65. The decision that we should integrate was in 1954, Brown versus Board of Education.
Right.
We'll come along in 64 or 65, and that as the school bells closed that spring of that year, the next year there were no longer African American schools. Now, you can travel the countryside today, Rob, in places like Conowingo, Pleasant Hill, and you'll see some of these old African American schoolhouses still standing along the way. But after 64-65, that 64-65 school year, we had one unified school system, and that went very quietly. There were no issues around that. We formed an NAACP in 1962 to serve as advocacy. The first president was a man by the name of McKinley Scott, who served. So there were a variety of things, and Cecil, the nation, the country, the state has come a long way during this period of time.
Right, and I'm just thinking back, Mike, when the efforts to get rid of the segregated restaurants on Route 40 were going on. Starting in the early 60s, there was no I-95.
Right.
Route 40 was the big deal. So I remember the glass kitchen, and I don't think it's there anymore.
No, I don't think it is. But yeah, so you're right. Route 40 was the big deal. It was so important that what you're talking about there, Rob, on Route 40, that this thing about integrating the restaurants through here got the attention of President Kennedy. He personally wanted these Elkton or Cecil County, Delaware, Newcastle County, Harford County restaurants integrated because we were looking bad in the Cold War. You see, the Russians were saying to the diplomats from newly formed independent African countries, yeah, they tell you you're equal over there, Mr. Ambassador, but can you stop in the, say, diner in Northeast and get served? You can't. Kennedy says, we can't have this because the Russians and the Cubans are making great progress in Africa over the motels and hotels and restaurants along Route 40. Right. And so he began personally sending emissaries here to fix the problem. And that's why it went so quiet.
To put the kibosh on the propaganda campaign.
Well, yeah, because he wanted the restaurants to start serving African Americans.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, kind of with the propaganda thing up.
Yep.
Anyway, that's fascinating that the Freedom Riders actually made a little trip early on.
Early in the cycle. Now, on February 9th, Rob, the Bear Library, February 9th at 2 p.m. is going to host a program on this called Collision on 40, Jim Crow, Civil Rights, and Russia Collide.
Wow.
I may have mangled that a little bit, but it's close. It's February 9th at 2 p.m. talking
now,
about...
will you be involved in that?
I'm doing the program, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're kicking off Black History Month early here at Cecil TV.
Yeah.
Maybe we can go up there and film that.
Oh, that would be great, yeah. Because it really is a fairly complex story. That Kennedy was involved, and then the reaction of, because this was a significant shift from the Jim Crow South to say we could do that. And Kennedy was this had to happen. This had to happen for national security right here in Cecil County. And eventually it did.
Wow.
He knew it before he died, it had happened.
Always learn something, Mike.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
And maybe we'll see you February 9th at the Bear Library.
Look forward to it, Rob. Thanks.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 30 at 6. We're going over the top with this one, just like the steeplechase. Renee Dixon from Freedom Hills, welcome.
Well, it's great to be here.
Yes, it's great to be inside, out of the cold, too.
This is true, yes.
So, you've got a great upcoming Saturday, February the 1st at the Wellwood, your annual gala with auction and dinner and stuff like that. Tell us all about that.
Correct. We are having an Olympic theme this year. So you can come dressed as your favorite Olympic sport if you choose to. I was going to come as a dressage queen, but now I've decided I have too many dressage friends.
Right, sure.
I don't want to take their thunder, so I'm wearing a toga. I'm going to get olive branch,
right?
Crown going on there, right? So, but the cool thing is, the most important thing about the evening is that all of the proceeds go towards the Therapeutic riding program, to the Freedom Hills Therapeutic riding program.
In case the unenlightened out there, I can't imagine there would be any, don't know what Freedom Hills does, explain a little bit.
Well, we are going into our 38th year of serving people who happen to have disabilities. Our youngest student was 18 months old when he started. He happened to have cerebral palsy, and our oldest student was 99 years old when he graduated on up.
Right.
We were the second program in the United States to teach military veterans, and we have a pretty big Kids at Risk program. We work with Cherry Hill Middle School and their Kids at Risk program. We have also worked with the Perryville Outreach group in Perryville. Of course, they come out to us.
So as your riders ride your gentle horses over through the beautiful countryside or maybe around the ring,
Yeah.
they're getting if somebody's like kind of limited in mobility, the motion of the horse actually provides them with exercise. And
Correct. Horseback riding is one of the best exercises you can get. Walking is the best exercise you can get. So if you can imagine somebody who has had a head trauma, so they were in a horrible car accident and now they're limited to being in a wheelchair, we can take that wheelchair, that person and their wheelchair into our riding ring, and we have this wonderful lift, and we help to lift that person up out of that wheelchair. We move the wheelchair, and then we bring in our wonderful horses, wonderful horse.
Right.
And we lower that person down onto that horse to give him 4 strong legs that he can walk around on. Now, the horse's movement has the athlete's hips moving,
right,
as if he was riding. As if he was walking.
Sure.
So therefore, that walking motion that the horse gives that athlete then helps all 6 systems of that person's body. We've actually, because of horseback riding, we have actually seen some of our friends who were paraplegics and quadriplegics have actually started walking because of the horseback riding.
That's amazing. And if their balance is a little shaky, you have sidewalkers and things?
Oh, yes. In the very beginning, everybody starts out with a head walker and a side walker. But we work with our athletes we picture the ideal, and we picture everyone riding independently. So we're going to work for them to become an independent rider. Maybe they never will become an independent rider, but they'll have fun in the trying to get there. But we have other athletes who happen to have maybe mental challenges who can walk, trot, canter, and jump. So we're not limited to just walking. We look at our riders and we see them doing the best that they can do.
And some of them compete in Special Olympics and
Sure.
other kinds of events?
Some of our athletes compete in, quote, able-bodied shows. You know, they go to horse trials, they go and they learn we teach them how to jump. It just depends on their ability.
So your Olympic theme kind of ties this all together then?
Sure. Well, it's an Olympic year, you know.
Yes.
So this is an Olympic year, so that's why we picked an Olympic theme. But certainly we have riders who will be headed for Special Olympics. But
Great.
we have riders headed for the
Great.
Olympics.
So
Now, a fun note is Philip Dutton has donated a set of his horse Mighty. It was the one that was in the 2016 Olympics, and I apologize. It's like Mighty something. They call him Happy. His barn name is Happy. So we have a set of his shoes that are going to be auctioned off.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
so we have Olympic auction items.
There's a live auction and a silent auction.
Correct.
This is all fundraiser for Freedom Hills.
Correct.
So tickets, Renee, are how much?
They're $60 a person.
$60 a person. And the dinner's at the Wellwood, February the 1st, 5:30 p.m. How would a person get a ticket?
You can go to our website and just get the ticket off the website.
freedomhills.com.
Correct.
Yeah. That sounds like a real plan. How many years have you been doing this? 38?
We've earned our 38th year of serving people who happen to have disabilities. None of our veterans, we never ask our military veterans to pay anything for their equine therapy. Our Kids at Risk program, when they come in a group such as Cherry Hill Middle School or the Perryville Outreach Group or WIN Family Services, and we've also worked with Bayside, we never ask them to pay. Yeah, so we do our best to keep we do our best to make therapeutic riding as affordable as possible to anybody who needs it.
That's awesome. You have a big farm, and how many
We do.
horses?
We have a lot of horses.
At least over a couple dozen.
Yes, so we have 28 horses
That's
right now.
a lot of hay.
But that doesn't mean that Freedom Hills owns all those horses.
No, but that's a lot of hay.
That is a
and
lot of
folks
hay.
out there, you
And
can help out. February 1st, freedomhills.com. Get your tickets, $60. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Renee.
Sure, thank you.
And now, once again, he's back again. It's been maybe a couple years. Brian McCandless, welcome to 30 at
Nice
6.
to be here tonight, Bob. How are you?
Okay, and I was trying to keep up with my plaid jacket.
You've got some nice Northern Irish stuff going on there. Northern Ireland's not far from Scotland.
No, it's just right across the drink, right?
Yep, about a
Speaking
20-mile row.
Speaking of Scotland, you're here as representing the Robert Burns Supper that's coming up?
That's correct. This Friday for the Cecil Land Trust. It's the third annual Robbie Burns Supper,
Nice.
At the Wall Center at Fait Hill. And I think tickets are really low. I think they've almost sold out, but
Great.
put it out there anyway.
Well, all kinds of good Scottish food.
Yes, food and drink.
And drink.
Yes.
And where you come in is the music, right?
I come in as the piper this year.
Okay, so you're celebrating Robbie Burns'
Yes.
birthday, I guess, and his poetry and his contributions.
Yes, Robbie Burns is considered to be one of the greatest poets to come out of Scotland. And his birthday is January 25th, so this is the Friday nearest to that, the 24th. He was a lover of pipes and pipe music. He was a creator of poetry about his country, which is Scotland, and more specifically is Lowland Scotland. The area south of Glasgow towards the coast, it was called Ayrshire.
Ayrshire.
Is the district. So we have Dumfries and Galloway and Ayr. And Ayr, A-Y-R, is the place where Robbie Burns grew up. And what I learned recently was when he was 10 years old, up to about 12, for a couple of years, his best friend was James McCandless. So it shares a
Kin to you.
last name, yes, with my family, which was really interesting to learn.
How about, now why all the fuss about Robbie Burns, other than the fact that he's the Scottish representing poet?
Yes, I think he was quite a figure. He grew up as a poor sort of crofter farmer, and he had an opportunity to go to Jamaica to make his money doing sugarcane, but he did not want to become part of the slave trade. He was a conscientious objector to that, and he was also a good poet in his day that the locals took up a collection and said, "Hey, Robbie, if you don't go to Jamaica, we'll help publish your first book of tunes."
How about that?
And so he got this grant. Well, the writer James Johnson, who was also the chief curator of many things British, James Johnson saw the poetry that Robbie Burns put together and hired him on commission. James Johnson was putting together the Scots Musical Museum, the most comprehensive collection of all the ancient and then contemporary poetry and song into a single collection. And Robbie Burns was his chief contributor to that collection.
I'm only guessing, but you're probably going to play a representative song representing what
Yes.
you're going to play
Yes.
this weekend, this Saturday, right?
That's
The
correct.
Wall
I'll be
Center.
playing the Highland pipes, which everyone knows. These are the pipes that you inflate with your mouth, big drones hanging out, and they're very loud. But in the lowlands where Robbie Burns lived, they had pipes like what I have here on the desk. This is called a lowland or border bagpipe. And it's different in the sense that it's inflated with a bellows. So you will put this around, and I'll play it later, and it inflates the bag. The chanter, which is very similar to a Highland chanter, has a much thinner reed. It's quieter, so it's more of an indoor pipe. And we have engravings of people from Robbie Burns' period sitting in rooms with just this kind of pipe. And this pipe is dated to 1795.
This one right here?
This one. And Robbie Burns died in 1796. So we know that this pipe came from that part of the world at the same time that Robbie Burns was composing, publishing, and living. So later I'll play one of the tunes that he wrote, and it's actually based on an old pipe melody that would have been played, and he would have certainly heard this many times.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We can't wait.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the show. Did we miss anything about this upcoming dinner?
I think we got it.
Tickets are available. How would one get a ticket?
One would go online. I mean, there is certainly the Facebook share site.
Cecil Land Trust.
Cecil Land Trust, yes. And you can also do a Google search on it. It'll be the first thing if you type third annual Robbie Burns Supper.
Awesome.
Yes.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you. It's wonderful to
Thank
see
you,
you.
my friend.
Thank you. So this is a tune, a lowland bagpipe tune from Scotland called Jenny Nettles. And it's a poem, there's a poem called Jenny Nettles that was written by Robert Burns. And he put it to a much older melody that we don't really know the original title of, but it was popular in the district of Ayrshire and Galloway where he was born and raised. So this is a lowland bagpipe or a border bagpipe from Scotland. This pipe was made around 1795. And I restored it in 1990, and it is in complete playing condition. And you'll notice that while it's a Scottish-looking instrument, it's not blown with the mouth, but inflated with the bellows under my arm. This would be the kind of bagpipe that was played in the lowlands and border regions of Scotland from the 1600s up through the 1800s. So we're going to hear Jenny Nettles.